Take just a few minutes, especially this month, because we have several newcomers. And how many are here for the first time? First time. And raise your hand if you know Ryan McIntosh or John Taylor. Okay. Thank you, Ryan and John, for inviting so many folks. It's really, really good to have you here. Just a couple of minutes on what Marketplace Connections is all about. Our mantra that you see behind me is good connections matter. I learned that big time a couple of weeks ago when I was in India for 2 weeks, and some of the connections were not working very well, and I had to find one of these very quickly. HDMI and VGA to get my projector and my laptop to work together. And then when I got to the second city, I had to make sure that I had this with me. You've got to have adapters when you go to India also. But then I got to the third city, I had all the cables, I had the adapter, and then I had 100 people waiting for me to say something intelligent, and the power went out. And the guy that was leading the meeting said, well, it may come back on in 2 or 3 hours or so. So I had PowerPoint stuff, you know, I had movie clips and those kinds of things, and it all worked out, and the power came back on. What I'd like to do is to connect just the India story to the connections that you see behind you. We hope that when you come, that business connections take place as a result of our meetings, so please do business networking. Friendship and relationships are really at the heart of who Marketplace Connections is all about. In these last several months, I've met many of you. You're becoming good friends, so relationships are very important to us. The last part is spiritual connections. We feel ultimately that a connection to God is absolutely critical for life, and so we try to create an environment for that to take place. What we do is we try to create what are called discovery groups. Discovery groups are all about creating conversations around things that really matter. Last Monday, we had about 6 of us that gathered just down the road at the Church Key pub at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We spent some time really asking 2 big questions and then had a great discussion around these 2 big questions. How many of you remember the movie The Dead Poets Society? Oh boy, just about everybody. The famous statement, carpe diem, seize the day. So our discussion centered around seize the day for what? How do you figure out in life what is worth seizing the day for? And then we read the lyrics to a country music song. How many country music fans? Oh, woohoo. Judy Salinas, I know that woohoo. And the song was a good Tim McGraw song, You've Got to Live Like You Were Dying. So we talked about what would be the implications of knowing that you're dying and trying to figure out what are you going to do with your life if you know that you're dying and this is your last day. We meet every other week. We would love to have you join us because that really is the heart of what Marketplace Connections is all about. There's groups in Redmond, Renton, Bellevue, Edmonds, and Kirkland. And on your table there's a little booklet called Connections, no surprise there. This is the material that we go through. It's called Finding Our Story and God's Story. And we love to use movies and music and art and have some really good conversations. So as you think about what Ryan is going to be sharing on navigating life transitions, think about those 2 questions. What really is worth seizing the day for? If you're going to live like you were dying, what would you do if you knew this was the last day of your life? So Marketplace Connections is all about creating conversations around things that matter. John Taylor is going to come up and introduce our speaker, Ryan. So John, I'll pass it on to you.
Hi everybody. It's great to see everybody here in the crowd. I'm John Taylor, TGB Architects here in Edmonds. And I have the privilege of introducing Ryan this afternoon. And just a little bit of quick backdrop on Ryan. About 10 years ago, I met Ryan and his dad and at a conference that we both participate in. And our company is an architecture company, and we created an arm that was a construction company as well. And so we were providing design build services back in those days prior to the recession. Ryan and his dad, Don, of Ryan General Contractors, they were contractors who aligned themselves with an architectural firm to provide design build services. And we were in competition with each other and had never met each other. So this was the first place at this conference where we encountered each other. And you know how it is in those situations. There's the mutual respect in that kind of a situation when you meet your competitor, but you also back up a little bit to size each other up, and you start asking the questions, well, what do they have that we don't have? And why are they getting those projects that we're not getting? Well, the recession hit. We had to, for a lot of different reasons, for those who know my story, we had to bankrupt our construction company. Their relationship with their architectural firm was an out-of-state firm, and there was some situations there where they had to sever that relationship. And so we needed to team up with a contractor, and they needed to team up with an architect. And as we started to do the little dance together, I began to realize that these guys were the real deal. Do you know what I mean by the real deal? And I got to see Ryan and his dad in situations that were difficult situations where they always stood up for serving the client with integrity. And I started to realize about Ryan that he was more about service and a position of influence than he was about success and image. I don't know about you guys in good connections that matter in business, but it's those kind of people that I want to align with and do business together with. So now we're friends, and we're embarking down a road together of coming more and more together, our two firms, in providing design build services. Ryan and I are now doing seminars together, and I got to tell you, Ryan, you've come a long ways, buddy. We had the privilege of presenting to many people here a couple weeks ago, and Ryan's talks were just phenomenal. So will you join me in welcoming Ryan McIntosh?
Well, about John, was it 3 months ago or so, we sat down and talked about the opportunity for me to come to this event, and it was easy to commit to. Now that it's here, it's really happening, so I appreciate the invite. And I appreciate everybody showing up. I didn't expect this type of response. In fact, we're usually upstairs in the smaller, a little more intimate room, but this will work for us just as well. Before I get into my story, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about myself. I am the Vice President / Director of Operations for Ryan General Contractors. My dad, as John mentioned, is the owner of the company. Now that's a bit of a self-given title, partly because, like I said, my dad is the owner, but also because I'm the one that creates the business cards and I can write anything under my name I want. That's what I chose. I have been married to my wife, Megan, for 11 years. We have 2 daughters together, Finley, who's turning 8 this Sunday, and Cecilia, we call her Cece, and she's 4. And here on Sunday afternoon, we're going to be boarding a plane and going to what's known as the happiest place on earth for a week. I have been there before. My wife and I went there a few years after we were married, before we had kids. And we referred to the 3 o'clock time as the meltdown hour, because it was basically the time that all the parents were trying to squeeze every last drop of the Disneyland ticket. And whether the kids needed a nap or not, we were going on rides was the mentality. So you see kids just kind of strewn around, crying, meltdown, and we thought, we're never bringing our kids here. And then we had kids and realized it wasn't an option, so we're going to be on our way. My wife and I, what I'll say about my family is we're high energy. Sometimes I feel like I'm in just a dead sprint to keep up with the 3 girls. I'm on the lower end of the energy spectrum with these girls, so I enjoy it, but at least once a month, me and my wife, we need to drop the grandkids off at my parents' house, and we need to just go out and have a date night. And what that usually means is kind of a low-energy dinner where we just have real nice conversations, followed by going to watch a movie. And when I say watch a movie, what I really mean is my wife watches the movie and then I take a nap. In fact, I was pretty proud. A couple months back, we went and saw a movie, and I was able to sleep from the opening credits to the closing credits. And I must have been snoring because a guy turned around and asked me if I had enjoyed my nap, and I replied that yes, I definitely had. I have a really close group of friends that I enjoy my time with. We're all high school friends. There's about 8 of us. One of them's right here in the front row, Topher, if you can raise your hand. We love to compete with each other. Our fun is to go out and play darts or pool or bowling or golf, whatever it is, as long as there's a lot of competition and, more importantly, a lot of trash talk. Me and Topher especially really go at each other. It's not really about who wins, but it's about who is better at making the other guy look bad during it. So since I'm here in this public forum, I want to just be on the record that I am a better bowler than Topher is. But my real passion as far as fun is golf. If I could golf, I'd golf at least a couple times a week. In fact, if you were to ask me what I want to be when I grow up, when I was a kid, I would say one of 2 things. I either want to be a professional golfer or I want to be a dentist. Now, I used to say this to my parents and they'd give me kind of a blank stare, maybe a raise of the eyebrow, because they knew 2 things about me, one of which was I was not very good at golf. And number 2 was I was doing poorly in school. So when I got out of high school, I went into college. I didn't have much of a focus. And after about a year of my parents paying the tab, they said, Ryan, maybe you should take a break from college for a little while you refine your focus, really figure out what you want to do with your life. And my dad offered me a job. Now, I showed up that first day and I was kind of like, okay, Dad, what am I up to? What's my job here? And he walked me to the front of the office and he pointed to the door, which has the logo of our company, Ryan GC. And he said, you see that name, Ryan? He said, I want you to work here as if you're an owner. But I'm going to let you choose your job. You can do whatever you want. But there's 2 requirements. 1, I want you to do it with passion. And 2, I want you to do it with focus. So what I chose for my first job with Ryan GC was the delivery driver. And I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually. I got to go out and meet the guys in the field. I got a good idea of what kind of projects our company was up to. But I definitely wasn't focused. I definitely wasn't passionate. And this rang true, especially I was driving down the freeway one day with a load of flat stock in the back of the truck. And I heard a noise, and I had just enough time to see the load sliding off the back of the truck on the freeway. I pulled over. I was able to salvage most of the material. And I got back to the office that day and I realized that maybe delivery driver wasn't my career. I needed something else. So that day I promoted myself to project engineer. Project engineer is basically the guy that helps around the office. For the project manager, I was doing everything from making copies to calling subcontractors. And again, this was a pretty good way of getting introduced to the business. I saw on the other side of the fence the organizational side of the office, and it was good for me. But to say that I was passionate about this job or focused, I definitely wasn't. In fact, I spent a lot of my time just kind of looking out the window and imagining what it was I really wanted to do with my life. I didn't think it was construction. Well, one day my dad, he's walking by my office and he says, Ryan, me and Patrick are going to meet with a church. Now, Patrick's our chief estimator. Him and my dad were going to go talk with these guys, and my dad let me know that we're one of 3 contractors that they're considering hiring. And we're going to go talk to them for an hour, and hopefully we'll lay out the reasons that they should work with us and get the job. Well, I was fascinated by this whole process. I sat down, and immediately Patrick and my dad, they had a game plan of how they were going to communicate with this church board. Patrick was the numbers guy. He, in fact, to this day, people call him the human computer. It just kind of flows from him. He knows the cost of just about everything. And as he sat in that meeting, I was just shocked at how much he knew. He had such a grasp on the project. And my dad was a little bit more on the relationship side. He would connect with the people personally and talk about his story, the story of our company and the story of his life. And we left that meeting feeling really connected to this church group. And it was no surprise a few days later they called and said, "Congratulations, we're hiring you as our general contractor." Well, I was hooked. This idea that you could walk into a group of people you've never met and as a result, an hour later, actually get a job from it that feeds the company, that was something I wanted to continue to pursue. For the next few years, every time Patrick and my dad would go interview, they'd bring me along. And what started off as a small piece of the sales presentation grew into a bigger piece. Before I knew it, I was actually pulling my own weight in those presentations. My dad gave me a compliment that I really appreciated. He said, "You have good instincts on reading the crowd. And not only that, you know when to talk, but more importantly, you know when it's time to be quiet." That's something I often try to remember as I ramble on in some of these sales meetings, that it's sometimes good just to be quiet. And I wanted to be a part of this. In fact, we had a pretty good thing going. We were signing up jobs, it seems like left and right. This was around 2008, and we had about a dozen jobs in various stages of design, permitting, fundraising, and we were excited about the future. Now, I went on vacation, and I was flipping through the channels, and I noticed the news report that the stock market had crashed. And later we would know this was the beginning of what was known as the Great Recession. Well, I'm sitting there with my family, having a great time, and I remember thinking, gee, I wonder if this is going to affect any of these projects we have going on at home. What does this financial situation mean for us? Well, when I returned back from vacation, I checked my phone because the light was blinking. And what it was messages from different owners or representatives that we had been working with. And the message was all the same. It was, "Ryan, due to the financial uncertainty, we need to put this project on hold until we have a clearer idea what this all means to us." Well, this was really the start of some pretty dark times for our company. For about 4 years, between 2008 and 2012, we literally scratched and clawed our way into survival. Unfortunately, we had to let go about half of the company. I think we went from about 10 people in the office to 5. We went from about 30 in the field to less than half of that. But we were thankful that we were able to survive. We really felt blessed. By 2008, or 2012, I'm sorry, we were starting to see some things come back. In fact, we had some large projects signed up, and we were excited that we were finally out of the bad economy. The largest project that we had going on was something called the Olympic Hotel and Athletic Club. Now, this was a beautiful hotel. It's a 4-star boutique hotel. It's 3 stories of underground parking, 4 stories of above-ground hotel. It's about as nice as it can be. In fact, Sunset Magazine recently did a picture expose calling it one of the top 50 hotels in America. And as beautiful as this hotel was, it really doesn't paint a picture of how dark of a time it was for our company. You see, this was a $12 million project. The projected profit of this project was nearly $1 million. Now, as a $15 million company per year, this was our year. Pretty much anything we did on top of this was going to be considered icing on the cake. Because of that, we were working with 2 churches at the time, both of which were completely stretched as far as they could financially, and they didn't even know if they could build. In fact, at the groundbreaking of one of our churches, they said, "Times are so tough that we're not even sure we can afford stamps to put on letters to ask for more money." Well, because we had been so blessed with this project, my dad and I met, and we made the decision that we're going to cut our overhead and profit in half on both of these churches that we're working with. We felt like it was something we had been blessed for, that we could pay it forward to these ministries that needed it. So typically we're about an 8 to 10% markup on overhead and profit. We cut that in half for both of these churches and felt good about it. So times were good, but about halfway through this Olympic Hotel project, what I noticed was that these profits weren't quite meeting up to the expectations of projections. I met with the project manager, who at the time was also one of the owners of our company. And I said, "Hey, what's going on with these profits? They don't seem to be anywhere near what they should be." And he said, yeah, Ryan, you know what? Don't worry about it. We've had some challenges, as you know, from the front end of this project, but we've got those behind us now. And while we're not going to quite make what we thought, it's going to be a very good project. Just don't you worry. Well, at the time, I had something in the pit of my stomach that wasn't adding up. It didn't seem right. I knew that there was challenges, but what I was seeing from a financial standpoint wasn't really adding up. But I wanted to have faith, and I didn't want to scrutinize and get all into the business of his project because he had let me know that I needed to trust him, which I did. A few months later, my controller, Joellen, called me into her office and she said, Ryan, I'm getting concerned because our bank accounts, our operating dollars, basically our retained earnings, are really low, and I'm not even sure how we're going to make payroll. Well, this was a big wake-up call. I knew that we were dipping, but construction does have a tendency to have ebb and flow from a billing standpoint. So again, I called the project manager and I said, this is getting scary. What is the deal? And he said, we're underbilled. Don't worry, Ryan, it's all under control, and we're going to be just fine. There's only 3 months left in the project, but we're going to make all of our profits in these last 3 months. Well, again, I had been in denial for some time about this, and I knew I needed to scrutinize the information. So I asked Joellen, print me out everything you have on this job, a month-by-month report. I want to see the information. I want to see the cost to complete, anything you can get me. So that night, after everybody had left the office, I spread all of that financial information out on our conference room table. And I began dissecting it and really going through the job costs to get an idea of where we were at. And what I found was shocking. See, we weren't in a position to make that $1 million that we really needed. In fact, we weren't even in a position to make any money on the job. As I looked at the project budgets and the cost to complete, we were standing in line to lose $500,000 of money that we did not have. Now, when I realized this, I remember just falling back in the chair. I was numb. See, it was my job to be making sure that our company was healthy. It's my job to be scrutinizing this information and not just taking in faith that everything was fine. And I had failed at my job. And I really was beating myself up. I started thinking about my family, my girls, of how I had let them down. I started thinking about my employees' families, how I had let them down, and what was I going to do? I had no answers, but I could see right away that we were in huge trouble. Well, I did the only thing I could do, because in that moment I wasn't a 35-year-old vice president, but what I was is I felt like just a scared kid that needed to talk to his dad. I wasn't calling my boss, I was calling my dad, and I said, Dad, it's bad, it's really bad. He said, I'll be down. About 10 minutes later, him and my mom showed up. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I walked them through all this financial information, and they saw the same thing that I had, that we were in huge trouble. I'll never forget what my dad said. He goes, you know what, Ryan, we're not going to solve this here tonight. I think we need to go home, but before we do, I'd like to say a prayer. Now, I thought my dad was going to say a prayer something like, pray for the miracle that money will fall from the sky and heal us. I thought maybe it was a miracle as in this financial information we were reading would be incorrect and we were actually just going to be fine. But my dad didn't pray for that at all. What he prayed for was how proud he was of me. And basically what else he said was, I pray that Ryan can go home and sleep, go home to his family in peace, knowing that we're going to get over this, we're going to solve this problem. And then the last piece of the prayer that he said was, thank you for this challenge, Lord, because we're excited to see what it all means. See, my dad believed it was all for a purpose. He didn't believe that it was the end, he believed it was the beginning of something. Well, I went home that night, driving home, and I wanted to honor my dad's prayer of being able to disconnect, but I couldn't. I was just tearing myself apart. And I thought of how hopeless of a situation this was. I mean, I just couldn't see any way possible we were going to survive this. But then another story came to my mind of a situation that happened a few years earlier. You see, when my wife and I first found out that she was going to have a baby, we were excited. We went in to go find out the sex of the baby. We found out it was a girl. And as excited as we were, the ultrasound technician said, I got to go get the doctor real quick to look at something. The doctor came in, And as she was doing the ultrasound, she said, well, I have some bad news. Your child has something called a cystic hygroma growing. And I can't tell you much more about it. You need to go see a genetic counselor. So we went later that afternoon and met with this genetic counselor. The genetic counselor told us the grim news, very hopeless situation. Basically, this growth on the back, there's a 90% chance that because of that, our child won't make it full term of pregnancy. And out of those 1 in 10 that do have, it's called a resolved cystic hygroma that reabsorbs into the body, that's a 10% chance. The children that actually do have this resolved, there's then over a 90% chance that that child will have a malformed heart. One of the chambers won't form correctly. So this is around the time the genetic counselor pulled out the pamphlet of termination and let us know that this is a hopeless situation and the only reasonable thing to do is to terminate. Basically, go home and try again was the message. Well, that wasn't going to work for us. We went home, started calling everybody we knew and asking for prayers, giving the good news that we were having a baby girl, but it was going to be an uphill battle for us. Now, before we knew it, we had a prayer chain going around the world. We have a lot of connections with different missionaries. So before we were hearing reports from Iraq and Sierra Leone and Chile and Venezuela and Peru. We literally had thousands of people praying for us. So when we went back in to get the follow-up a month later, we heard the first miracle, which was the cystic hygroma had resolved itself, and congratulations. But they reminded us right away that the chances of survival were still very low due to the potential heart issue. They even referred us back to the genetic counselor and said, you may want to go talk to the genetic counselor again. Well, we knew what the message was going to be there, so we skipped that meeting. And what happened was we went back out to the prayer chain and said, we've received our first miracle, but we need the next one. Please keep praying. The next time we went to go see the ultrasound technician, it wasn't the technician, it was the doctor. She wanted to be there for it right away. And as she checked, she had kind of a puzzled look on her face, and she said, excuse me, and she walked out of the room. She came back with 2 other doctors, and all 3 of them were huddled over this monitor. And a smile started to come to their faces, and they looked over at us and they said, you're not going to believe this. Your baby's heart is perfectly formed. There's no malformation, and congratulations, you're having a healthy baby girl. So this is what I'm thinking about as I'm driving home that night. And what it was reminding me of was how you can go into as hopeless of a situation as possible, but we have reason to believe. We have reason to be hopeful. It was exactly what I needed, and it fulfilled my dad's prayer that I could go home and sleep a full night, which I did. Now, the next morning I woke up and we called an emergency meeting. And I wanted to let all the guys from the field and the office know the situation that we were in. I basically painted a picture that we were down really low on money and that the next 3 months we're going to be down even more due to the poor performance of this project. What I was really doing at this time was giving them a heads up so that they could be thinking, getting in the headspace that it's probably time to get another job. I walked out of that conference room feeling pretty defeated, really hating that I had to give them that news. And then there was somebody who followed me into my office. It was Joe, my superintendent. See, to him, the meeting wasn't over. Behind Joe was the rest of the team. Before I knew it, in my small office, I had about 10 people. We were all plugged into the room. And the first question that came up was, what are we going to do with these 2 churches that we're contracting with? The ones that we've cut our profit for so low. See, we all knew there was no way those churches were going to be able to get built if it wasn't for us. If we were to fail, another contractor would come in and charge way more than what we were. So we knew what would happen if we failed. If we failed, the churches would fail. And to us, that was not an option. That's when the whole idea that failure is not an option. So we said, we got to get to work. We don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to get to work. And some of the ideas that started coming from that meeting, I remember Joe, who was really close to 2 projects, he said, you know what, I can run both of these at the same time. I'll lay these guys out in the morning, I'll work during the day here, and I'll go back in the evening and make sure everything I lined up happened correctly. We can save some overhead if we do that. Another idea was, instead of hiring the subcontractors on this job to do the concrete and the framing, I'll put my tool bags on and I'll do it myself. We can save $10,000 here and $15,000 here. Now, we knew these weren't going to be big enough pieces to solve our issue, but it was anything we could do, and we were willing to go for it. So maybe we were just extending our longevity by a week or two. Well, it was around this time that what I call the miracle happened. I was actually at John's beach house. We were talking about some marketing ideas. And I had received a phone call from somebody. And I answered the phone, and it was a gentleman that we had met with a few months earlier. See, this was a project that we weren't all that interested in working with. We didn't quite align with their ethics. We didn't think we'd be a good fit for it. So instead of telling them no thanks, what we did was we put a number, a profit, on top of our number so enormous that there's no way they would ever work with us. It was our way of saying no thanks. Now, this gentleman says, we've got 3 bids here, and by far yours is higher than anyone else's. But we don't care. We want to work with you. We think you're the right fit for this project. And he begged me to come meet with him. So the next morning, me, my dad, and Patrick were met there. It was really the anti-sales meeting. It was them pleading with us to do the job. And they said, this is a 10-month job, but we need it done in 5, and please give us a number of what it's going to cost extra to get it done in 5, and we'll pay it. We don't care what it is. At the end of that meeting, we reluctantly accepted the job. And they gave us one last piece of news. They said, now, it's customary for us to put 20% down as a deposit. We pulled out our calculator. I remember my dad showing me his phone. He had added it up. It was a little over $400,000 that they were going to be giving us before we even started the project. It was basically exactly the amount of loss that we were expected to see over the next couple months. Well, that was the answer to prayer. And we knew that we were going to make it. We walked out of that meeting and we were calling people to let them know what had happened and how we were going to be okay. Well, my dad and I were out, we were actually building a Salvation Army at the time as well down in Renton. And we decided we were going to go be bell ringers, partly because we were feeling so thankful about our whole experience. And we're up there ringing the bell. And at the time, Patrick hadn't completed his cost to complete. We didn't know exactly what kind of profit we were going to make. We knew that it was going to be pretty healthy because throughout that 5 months of that project, they kept adding change order after change order. And it didn't matter what we put on there as a number, they just paid it. They were fine with it. And by the end of this job, Patrick was doing the accounting, and I started thinking, you know, I sure hope this doesn't turn into another hotel where we think everything's fine. It was such a mad dash to get this project done. We didn't really even keep our fingers on the pulse financially. And Patrick called me that night. I'm out here ringing the bell for Salvation Army, and he says, you're not going to believe this, Ryan. Are you sitting down? And I'm thinking, uh-oh, here comes the bad news. Patrick said, this job didn't make the projected $500,000 that we plugged in. But because of all the change orders and everything, the job made $1 million. Now, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we had about $1 million dip because of the hotel, a swing, which basically just crippled us. But by the end of the year, 3 days before Christmas, we had almost the exact dollars in our bank account as we did the first day of the year. From a financial situation, if anybody was to look at our books, they'd just think we were flying steady as we could be the whole time. And nobody knows any different from the way that it looks from a financial standpoint. So what did we learn from this? Was this just a couple cool stories or, amazing stories that I get to share? First off, I think we learned from a business standpoint, there's things that we have to be more diligent about. If we're going to keep on going for the years that we want to do business, we're going to have to be more diligent and focused on our finances. So those are the practical takeaways. Now, everybody had the conversation of what is the biggest challenge that you've overcome. And maybe some of you out here right now are having those challenges right now. And all I could say is that this whole idea that failure is not an option. Well, what is failure? You know, I think society tells us that failure is just when you don't do well, you underperform, you lose. It's easy to see who failed in sports. But I would say in business and in personal experiences, the failure isn't when you've lost. The failure is when you quit hoping and quit believing. And I guess what I'm just trying to encourage everybody from these stories, what I've learned is, in the face of challenge, give yourself permission to have the grit and the courage to face those challenges and push through them. Because more often than not, they're a mirage. They're the enemy trying to get us to not push forward. And if we really believe in what we're doing and we really have to progress, don't let the negative derail your mission. Thank you. And one other thing I wanted to share real quick. This is actually the completed projects, those 2 churches that we were talking about, and the reason that we pushed forward was for both of these churches. So they just recently were completed.